Each month, the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases its employment report, one of the most closely watched indicators by financial markets. For April, the unemployment rate held at 4.3%, non-farm payrolls increased by 115,000, and labor force participation rate edged down slightly to 61.8%. While the unemployment rate is considered a lagging indicator, it still matters because full employment, along with stable prices, is one of the Federal Reserve's dual mandate. What receives far less attention is manufacturing unemployment. In April, the manufacturing unemployment rate was 3.3%, well below the overall unemployment rate of 4.3%. In fact, manufacturing unemployment has remained below the national rate since 2011, aside from a brief disruption during the pandemic. But labor conditions inside manufacturing are not always uniform. In plastics and rubber products manufacturing, unemployment rose from 1.1% in January to 5% in April. At first glance, that may seem concerning, but this sector has experienced significant monthly volatility. Looking at data since 2024, unemployment has ranged from 0.3% to 8.2%. So the latest increase may reflect volatility more than a clear deterioration in labor market conditions. At the same time, plastics and rubber products manufacturing lost 2,000 jobs in April, yet manufacturers continue to face persistent challenge finding skilled workers. Manufacturing job openings climbed from 389,000 last March to as high as 510,000 in January before easing to 462,000 in March this year. Demographic pressures and skilled labor shortages continue to weigh on hiring. So, what does the labor market outlook look for the rest of 2026? The US economy expanded in the first quarter, and forecasters expect unemployment to stabilize around 4.5% throughout next year. That stability can be interpreted in two ways. On one hand, it may signal labor market resilience, with employers holding onto workers despite slower growth and elevated uncertainty. In the plastics industry, average weekly hours for production workers have remained above 41 hours per week for 4 consecutive months, higher than the same period last year, suggesting that manufacturers are relying more heavily on existing workers instead of expanding payrolls. On the other hand, a stable unemployment rate could also mask softer labor market conditions where slower hiring offsets the absence of broad layoffs. In other words, the labor market may not be weakening sharply, but it may not be accelerating either. For manufacturers, including the plastics industry, the challenge in the months ahead may be navigating persistent uncertainty, ongoing labor shortages, and moderating economic momentum. The May employment report, scheduled for release on June 4th, will provide another important signal on the direction of the labor market. I'm Perc Pineda, Chief Economist of the Plastics Industry Association.